In the big picture view of climate change, it's easy to see how an effect on one aspect of our planet can quickly affect many others. Take water, for example. It covers most of the planet. We need it to survive, and yet it's also a threat in the world of human-accelerated climate change, not only in the form of rising oceans, but from what's falling from the sky.
We've had an increase in severe weather events, including heavy downpours in Wisconsin.
Now, scientists are quick to point out they can't guarantee climate change is responsible for any individual storm, but when they look at the trends over the years, they can and do draw that conclusion.
We have increasing precipitation here in the south. We have more bigger storms. Something like 3/4 of Madison's large storms have occurred since 2000.
In fact, records show Madison has had nearly as many heavy rainfall events in the past decade as the 5 previous decades combined. And 6 of the 7 wettest years on record have happened in the past 25 years. We can expect more of those big storms in the years ahead, too. The Wiki climate models project a 25% increase in heavy rainfall events, 2 inches or more in 24 hours. But Wisconsin appears to be on the edge of a climate change boundary, with the northern part of the state going through a somewhat different experience than the south. Instead of more precipitation across the board, weather patterns have put the north in a drought cycle roughly every 10 years.
We're seeing deeper and longer droughts in the north. The most recent one was about 2006 to 2013. The lake levels all drop and things change pretty dramatically, and that pattern seems to be intensifying.
Comparing north and south, records from 1950 to 2006 show summertime precipitation decreased by 2 to 4 inches in northern Wisconsin and increased about the same amount in the south. The scientists say that their climate models show a 75% probability that Wisconsin as a whole will have more annual precipitation, mainly during the winter and spring, and more of it will fall as rain instead of snow. In fact, they predict the state's annual average snowfall by the year 2050 will be 14 inches less than it is today.
We have 3 different greenhouses that are set up to simulate future conditions for Wisconsin winters.
As fierce as nature can be, it's also very fragile, and one seemingly small change can have huge consequences. Which is why UW researchers are studying how climate change is affecting life at ground zero, the thin layer between the snow and the soil, called the subniveum.
What we're seeing, though, is that this climate change effect on snow conditions is actually creating a colder and more variable snow-soil interface. But now that those temperatures are getting colder and warmer and they're jumping around on a daily basis more frequently, we see that stable thermal refuge is now kind of collapsing around them.
So there are species that are like wood frogs and some amphibians that actually really do require those temperatures, those stable temperatures to get through the winter. And there are species like even grouse that a lot of people sort of enjoy that actually use below the snow sort of environments in order to kind of get through winter, the harsh winter weather.
When they're actually in snow burrows, you can get really close to them.
Grouse are a popular game bird in Wisconsin, but they may not be around much longer with less snow for them to use as protection against predators and cold.
Last year we only had about a week that snow conditions were suitable for burrowing, and pretty similar this year as well. And so we've actually been doing some research that shows that grouse are actually more stressed at really cold temperatures when they can't find a snow burrow to burrow into.
A lack of snow is also hurting the snowshoe hare in Wisconsin. The animal's fur coat turns white in the winter regardless of snow cover. Now that gives them perfect camouflage against predators in the snow, but makes them easy targets when that white coat stands out against a brown, snowless background.
Wisconsin is not getting as cold as it used to get. And that's the huge change that we're seeing in Wisconsin right now.
Scientists project that Wisconsin's annual average temperature will rise between 4 and 9 degrees by mid-century. Since 1950, the state's average temperature has gone up by 1.1 degrees, but that relatively small number is misleading. Because in that same time period, there were 5 fewer days with a low temperature below zero in southern Wisconsin, and 14 to 20 fewer of those frigid days in the northwest central part of the state. People who ice fish were among the first to notice.
Back in the 1880s, there was an average of 4 or over months of ice fishing on the Madison Lakes. It's down to about 2.5 months instead of 4 months.
In fact, records show Madison's Lake Mendota has lost 19 days of ice cover every 100 years since the year 1850. And it's not just ice fishing that's being affected by the warmer temps.
The walleye, Wisconsin's favorite sport fish, is a fish that has and is and will continue to be impacted by a changing climate.
What did the climate change to make it worse for the walleye?
Ice cover is decreasing on our lakes. Lakes are becoming warmer.
The warmer the water, the less oxygen it holds. And if you're a fish, you need oxygen to live.
There are also fewer days of ice cover on the Great Lakes. During the winter of 2016-17, ice cover on Lake Superior was so minimal that the Madeline Island Ferry was able to keep running all winter. Only the 4th time in 160 years that that's happened, but the last 3 of those have happened over the past 6 winters. And less ice cover on the Great Lakes also leads to more evaporation, which causes lower lake levels, which hurts the shipping and cold water fishing industries. And it's not just lakes where fish may struggle. Wisconsin's rivers and streams are warming too.
Brook trout, which is really a favorite native species, will be totally eliminated because of they need the best in the coldest water.
And what little cold water habitat the trout have left is threatened by damaging runoff from those more intense storms. Climate change has left some species hanging on for dear life.
The kinds of birds people would see at the bird feeder, some of the siskins and the warblers and the finches, are going to be the ones that they're normally seeing, are going to be the ones that they don't see anymore.
They can adapt or they can go extinct.
Plants are also having to adjust to climate change, and like animals, not all of them are expected to make it in a warmer, wetter Wisconsin.
That may change the composition of tree species in the state. This is probably going to have the biggest effects in northern Wisconsin.
The white birch is one of those tree species that will likely disappear in the next 100 years. They're a species that likes a little bit cooler than the climate's going to be.
Climate change isn't a death knell for everything. Plants and animals that are better adapted to a warmer environment have already started showing up in Wisconsin. Milder winters get the credit for boosting the white-tailed deer population in the north. But the benefits of a warming climate come with a warning.
One thing we may see as a result of fewer really cold days is more invasive species, more pests, more bugs, for example.
In fact, there have been recent discoveries in Wisconsin of the Lone Star tick, usually from Texas, and the Asian tiger mosquito, which can carry the Zika virus, both insects formerly believed to be too averse to the cold to come here. And let's not leave out humans. Scientists say the warmer, more volatile climate threatens people with everything from injuries in severe weather to heat-related illnesses to diseases from some of the insects we just mentioned.
We reach in the environment, and we call it tipping points, where something can be very successful and is a dominant predator, like the walleye has been in northern Wisconsin for virtually thousands of years. It's been the dominant predator in our northern lakes, and slowly over time that was beginning to change, and it changed rapidly here in the last 60 years.
And scientists say the changes are happening so rapidly because of humans. The trend of more extreme rainstorms has created a severe level of erosion and pollution runoff into Wisconsin's waterways. The main culprit, phosphorus, from leaves, fertilizer, and manure, which feeds a toxic blue-green algae that grows in the lakes.
Back on the 16th of June, not that long ago, we had one of the biggest blooms I've ever seen on Lake Mendota. The entire surface of the lake looked like it was painted teal blue. Fish were dying in the shallow water all around the lake. Ducks were dying because they were getting the toxins.
Are we going to see more of these?
Yes, we absolutely will.
And UW Limnology Center Director Steve Carpenter says the problem would be even worse if not for the effort and money invested in things like manure digesters and public education in Dane County. But that doesn't mean any progress has been made.
I think that's a really striking impact. Here in the Madison area, we've spent tens of millions of dollars to control phosphorus, and the data shows zero net progress. And the reason is that the precip has gotten more intense.
One of the state's most at-risk areas of water from phosphorus runoff is Green Bay. Because it's fed by the Fox River and many smaller tributaries that flow from farmland, scientists say the water in Green Bay is ripe for those toxic algae blooms.